Welcome, everyone. I am excited to have a great conversation today with Mr. Al Lyman and Justin. And is Karen still around?
Yes, she's here.
Hi, Karen. So I'm excited to thank you, everyone, for joining this live conversation today. And Al, you are not just a farmer, you're a fifth generation farmer. Tell us a little bit about where you farm and what you farm.
Okay, well, thanks for having us on. To give credit, actually, Karen's the fifth generation farmer. She's the fifth generation. Justin's the sixth on this farm. In fact, I'm looking at ground that's been in her family since 1867. So it's
Wow.
we've been here a little while, but I'm an Iowa native. We met in college at Iowa State, and we've been here since 1997. So we feed cattle, and we row crop farm, primarily corn. A lot of the corn goes to cattle feed, and then the manure from the cattle go back to the corn, and it's pretty good cycle, upcycling as they call it. So
Soybeans at all?
I'm sorry.
Do you grow soybeans at all?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Much of the time we grow corn. We need the feed, and with the manure system, the corn better utilizes the nutrients in the manure from the cattle. So
yeah,
it makes a pretty good circle of life, if you will.
Right. You got some cattle behind you right now, right?
We do. We're in front of one of our cattle barns. All of our cattle on this farm live under roof, and they stand on slats with rubber, and so we collect the manure in a basement underneath, and so we have zero runoff in Illinois, and in the higher rainfall areas we need to keep the rain off the manure so it doesn't run into our water system. So it's a pretty good system.
Mm-hmm.
The first barn we have, Karen's father built in the early 70s, and then we built this one about 6 years ago.
Great. And Justin, what are some of the things that you help out with? I know you've been home from school and you're finished with your school year. What are some of the things that you help with on the farm?
Well, I can pretty much do anything Dad does, anything he asks me to. I can feed cattle. I can run pretty much every piece of equipment on the farm, help maintain, change oil, just kind of try to be as helpful as possible in general. So
awesome. How's planting season going right now, Al?
It's been good. It was sure a pleasant change from a year ago, and a year ago we didn't finish till second week of June. We finished planting our corn crop a little over a week ago, and some of the first planted corn's coming out of the ground. So we've had a decent amount of rain, but I'm not going to complain. We have friends in other parts of even the state of Illinois that have been getting a lot of rain and too much, in fact. So I feel bad for them. I know what it's like when it's too wet. Yeah. We're in good shape this year.
Good. So tell me, how is COVID affecting you? And more broadly, what are some of farmers' biggest needs right now during the COVID pandemic?
Sure. Several things it's affected as we've gone through the pandemic. As people stayed home, just from the grain standpoint. So the extra corn that we don't feed to our cattle, we tend to sell to one of the ethanol plants nearby, and then we buy the co-product, they call it, which is after they make ethanol. That's a highly dense feed stuff. It's great for cattle, and so we'll buy that back. And as people stayed home, quit driving, ethanol demand went down. Therefore, corn demand went down, and the amount of co-products were reduced, and the amount and the price went up, and so it became a challenge on finding enough co-product feeds. We were fortunate here in that we had a contract in the plants we primarily work with, stayed running to a level that we were able to get enough feed. We adjusted our ration some because of that, because we were concerned about having enough. Since things are starting to open up, states are starting to open up, the driving is picking up. Actually, the ethanol demand's picking up. We're seeing more co-products available for feed, and we may we need to readjust or reanalyze whether we want to stay at this lower level of co-products or readjust our rations from that standpoint. The other challenge has been namely selling cattle, being able to move them on a timely basis, and that's been industry wide, not just for us, all over the country. And there's been a lot of media talk about processing plants, packing plants slowing down and shutting down, and that's sure been true here. It's been true in other parts of the country. It's kind of been a rolling blackout, if you will, across the country.
Can you walk us through, because I know I understand the issue tangentially, but for people that are with us and listening, can you walk us through some of the supply chain issues that we're dealing with, and kind of where are we seeing the breaks in the chain, and how is it affecting you in the meat supply chain?
Yes, I'd be glad to. So at the basic level, the beginning of our system is the cow-calf producer. So they'll own mama cows, mother cows. They'll have them for a number of years, and they have a calf crop every year, and some at different times of the year. But those producers tend to have grass available, pasture ground, largely ground that is not suitable for row crop production. And all over the country, there's areas where we can't grow corn on it, we can't grow soybeans on it, but we can sure turn grass into a highly dense protein in beef. It's a long, several-year process. So the calves are born, and then either that producer or a producer called a stocker will buy those smaller calves, and they'll group them together by size, and they'll continue to raise them on grass or feed them a high roughage diet, so they grow frame and they get a bigger size. Then it comes to the feeder part of it, which is our segment of the industry, and we tend to feed more high grain rations. We transfer them over from a more forage ration to a high grain ration, more highly efficient use of our grains. We turn our grain into beef and so forth. And then when they leave here, they'll go to a processing plant, a packing plant, and that's where where they start the process of becoming beef. And then there's they'll either go from the processing plant to a grocery store or grocery chain, a local, or there may be a middleman in between that process. Where the system broke down this year was that we had plenty of cattle. We had plenty of cattle on feed. We did here, as well as other producers that were available to go to the processing plant. And as the plant shut down, and it was mostly a labor thing, they either had COVID in their plants, they were worried about, and they couldn't have full staff. They had to rearrange how their workers were coexisting with each other, so they weren't close together. Even the break rooms, I know some plants set up tents outside so that they could have break rooms outside, or when they took a break, they weren't all together in the lunchroom and that sort of thing. So it became a challenge. And then some plants, the workers were scared of the COVID-19, so they just flat didn't come to work. So there's been all those issues on the table, and they've been major slowdowns, stoppage. I know several plants that have stopped and done what they call a deep clean, and they put in extra barriers, plexiglass between workstations and that sort of thing, and more personal protection, trying to keep the workers safe. And we absolutely want them to be safe as well, but it's an essential industry, and we need to keep the packing plants moving. That being said, they're starting to ramp back up. We were at about a 40% reduction in processing capacity in the last few weeks. We're probably back to 20 to 25 now. I mean, we're still not back to normal, but we're getting closer.
Okay. And did you lose any cattle as a result of this, or were you
any cattle? No. We slowed them down. So
okay.
We changed our rations so we weren't feeding them as fast.
Okay.
In fact, the cattle behind us, we were slowing them down a little bit. So,
Got it.
but we're starting to get better news. Packers are starting to buy cattle from us. Maybe even next week, as early as next week, we can start to move some again.
Yeah. What I find so interesting in listening to your description of everything that happens, it's almost like you talked about the supply chain. Earlier you said from gate to plate. Well, as consumers of meat, often we just see it from grocery store refrigerator to plate. But to learn everything about the background and how it got to the grocery store and understanding these supply chain issues and that's what the Illinois 17th does, right? This area of our state, we make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a large Tyson plant in the 17th at Joslin, and that's one of our major plants in this part of the country. And they've had issues, but they're working through them, and I understand they're getting along better. So there's all kinds of different producers, and it's a well-oiled machine when all the gears are turning right.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is amazing. It's a very highly productive industry, and in all the the connected industries, like the ethanol industry and everything, it all is it's an it's a living organism, how it all works.
Yeah. When one piece of it falls away, as a producer, we got to step back and rethink what we're doing and how we approach it. So this has been one of the more unusual springs I've been through in my career.
Yeah,
so
I bet.
Probably everybody could say that.
Right. We all have our own unique challenges in some way, shape, or form because of COVID.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Let me ask you this, Al. What is one of your favorite aspects of being a farmer?
Well, I enjoy taking good cattle and making them better, if you will. I enjoy being around the cattle. Every spring is a renewed year. So even with the COVID, when we were planting corn, there were a few things we had to do different as far as getting parts and getting some supplies, and had to plan ahead a little more than we usually do. But in essence, our neighbors and we all did what we do every year, and we worked the ground and we put seed in the ground, and watching it poke through the ground when it first comes up. That's always I'm always glad to see that. You always kind of worry, if you put a seed in the ground, is it going to grow or not? And usually it does, but you always feel better once it's out.
Yeah.
So, and it's just different seasons. I really enjoy fall when we're harvesting. Get to, as Karen always says, that's kind of our report card to see if we did well or not. And sometimes the report card is based on things we do, and a lot of times it's based on things we have no control over.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. I really appreciate just hearing your perspective and learning about what this time has been like for you guys.
Yeah, it's been very interesting, but it's rewarding. I do have a sense of pride of being able to help provide food for the country and the world, and we're trying to do the right thing every day. And we try to get better as we go. And the technology is allowing us to do our job better, and on a lot of levels. So, for example, hauling manure sounds like a kind of a drab job, but that's become a high tech job where we got GPS guidance on our manure tanks, and we measure how much manure per acre we put on, and we know the nutrient breakdown of that manure, and so then we adjust how much fertilizer we buy for the corn, where we put manure on the field. So
that's incredible.
I'm sorry.
It's mind blowing, the technology aspect of and how it's revolutionizing what you're doing.
It is, and And it's doing it for a couple of reasons. One's great for the environment. We're not wasting those nutrients. It's a economic reason. We have good reason economically not to over fertilize or over apply chemicals. All those reasons. So yeah, it's changed a lot in the 30 some years that Karen and I've been farming. But it's interesting.
Yeah. Justin, I'll give the last question to you. If anyone wants to ask Al any questions, you can just comment on the live stream comments. But I'll ask you, Justin, what is it like being a 6th generation farmer?
There's a lot of pride involved. You know, I kind of I think that it's something that not a lot of kids have the opportunity to be a part of. And I'm really grateful for like my ability to work here and keep something that's been going on for a long time, keep it going on, you know?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing, Justin. Al, thank you so much for just sharing your passion for farming and for cattle and educating me and educating everyone who's watching. I think it's so critical that we understand these issues and how they're affecting each one of our lives, whether we realize it or not. We're all connected to what you
Technical difficulties.